بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نويت صوم غد عن أداء فرض شهر رمضان هذه سنة لله تعالى إيمانا واحتسابا لوجه الله الكريم عز وجل.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى جميع الأنبياء والمرسلين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. We continue our theme for this Ramadan, دروس الحياة من قصص الأنبياء في كتاب الله, life lessons from the stories of the prophets in the Quran, incidences from the lifetime of prophets, peace be upon them, gleaned from the pages of the Holy Quran, with the aim of reflecting on the wisdom that we find in these stories and incidences to take place in the time of these prophets, and the lessons we can learn and which we could implement in our daily lives. Tonight we focus on lessons we learn from a particular incident occurred in the lifetime of Nabi Musa alayhi salam, an event that is so significant that in fact Surah Al-Baqarah, the second chapter in the chronological order of the Holy Quran, is titled after it. In this particular incident, Musa alayhi salam, his people had some issue in the society and they wished to have some crucial matter resolved. And Musa alayhi salam, instructed by Allah, as the verse says, وَإِذْ قَالَ مُوسَى لِقَوْمِهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تَذْبَحُوا بَقَرَةً. Remember when Musa alayhi salam told his people that Allah has commanded you to sacrifice a cow. قَالُوا أَتَتَّخِذُنَا هُزُوًا. The people responded to Musa and said, are you making a fool of us? Now Musa alayhi salam would never make a mockery or take lightly the command of Allah, and certainly he would not take lightly matters affecting the community for which he was responsible to guide. And he said, قَالَ أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ أَنْ أَكُونَ مِنَ الْجَاهِلِينَ. He said to his people, I seek refuge in Allah from such kind of ignorant behavior where I would make a fool on such an important matter. Basically, the people of Musa alayhi salam did not want to follow the command of Allah as was conveyed by him. So they started to procrastinate by getting technical in some way and using sarcastic remarks and engaging Musa by asking him, what kind of cow is it? What age must the cow be? What kind of color must the cow be? What shade of color must the cow be? All this was part of a delaying tactic. Eventually, they reluctantly sacrificed the cow without their hearts being engaged in that action. And the Quran says, فَذَبَحُوهَا وَمَا كَادُوا يَفْعَلُونَ. They did sacrifice the cow, but they did it almost as if they did not do it. In other words, they did not really want to do it, though they performed the act. They understood in their minds what was being commanded by Allah through Musa, but they did not feel in their hearts the desire to fulfill and follow that command with sincerity. And Allah alludes to this when He says at the end of the verse, وَيُرِيكُمْ آيَاتِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. The word ta'qilun, remember, we show you our signs and provide you these verses that you may think, that you may reflect, so that you may use your intellect, you may use your reasoning, you may use your mind. Immediately after saying about ta'qilun, about the mind, the next words that follow, ثُمَّ قَسَتْ قُلُوبُكُم مِّن بَعْدِ ذَلِكَ فَهِيَ كَالْحِجَارَةِ أَوْ أَشَدُّ قَسْوَةً. Allah makes reference to the mind and immediately goes to the heart. After all of this, your hearts have become hardened. Your hearts have become hardened and have become like rocks. And then it goes on to describe different kinds of rocks, which I will elucidate upon. So Allah says, your hearts have become like rocks. In fact, some of your hearts are worse than rocks, and He gives 3 categories of rocks. And we shall reflect upon that. Some hearts are like rocks, and this simile creates a particular imagery in our mind, a very thought-provoking image. These rocks are somewhat symbolic of hearts and the water. It says, وَإِنَّ مِنَ الْحِجَارَةِ لَمَا يَتَفَجَّرُ مِنْ الْأَنْهَارِ. Each of these rocks, or 2 of them, Allah speaks about water flowing from that. And these rocks are therefore symbolic, some ulama say, of hearts obviously, but the water that emanates from it may represent the potential for faith and the potential for goodness. So let's look at the 3 kinds of hearts and the 3 kinds of rocks. Allah says, the first kind of heart is that kind of heart filled with goodness, open to faith. Rocks and hills from which water springs forth. You find water flowing from it. وَإِنَّ مِنَ الْحِجَارَةِ لَمَا يَتَفَجَّرُ مِنْهُ الْأَنْهَارِ. Rocks from which water flows. You find water flowing there. This is like the heart of Sayyidah Khadija, Al-Mu'mineen, who accepted Islam on hearing of the first revelation and believed in the Prophet even before he announced his prophethood. She needed no debating. She required no argumentation, no convincing. She witnessed the truth, and her heart overflowed with the fountain of faith as well as a fountain of goodness. And as you know, the Rasul said about Khadija, آمنت بي إذ كفر بي الناس وواستني في مالها إذا حرمني الناس. She believed in me when no one believed. She assisted me when everyone refused to help. She needed no inspiration or motivation. She witnessed the truth and she embraced it. The second kind of heart is a troubled heart. A heart that has the potential for faith, but only comes to faith after some kind of a disaster or some kind of a traumatic event. And this traumatic event may bring the person to the realization of truth. وَإِنَّ مِنْهَا لَمَا يَشَّقَّقُ فَيَخْرُجُ مِنْهُ الْمَاءُ. The second kind of rock is the one that cracks open. It's forced open by some force, and then you find water flowing through it. And this kind of heart is like the heart of the companion of Rasulullah, Thumama bin Uthal. Thumama bin Uthal was a well-known king, powerful Arab ruler, unchallenged king, to whom one of the kings to whom the Prophet sent a letter to embrace or to invite them to Islam. He was one of those kings, the Roman king and the Persian and the Egyptian, and one of them was Thumama. And he had the intention of killing the Prophet. And an incident occurred where he was going towards pilgrimage from Yemen, and there was some altercation with people who happened to be Muslim, and in that altercation he was caught, and he came as a prisoner to Masjid al-Nabawiyya Sharif, where he was held as a prisoner in the Masjid of Rasulullah. And then he witnessed how Muslims behaved, this enemy who wanted to kill the Prophet. He witnessed the behavior of the companions and the family of the Rasul, and he witnessed the benevolence and the compassion of the Rasul. So when the Rasul set him free, he went for a distance and he came back. He said, no, I want to embrace this faith. He came to Islam through a traumatic experience, a hater of Islam, a wanton killer of the Prophet ﷺ, but a traumatic experience like imprisonment. He saw the reality, and then from that rock which was cracked open, there flowed the faith. Then there is a third kind of heart, and many people have that. They may be in faith purely out of fear. وَإِنَّ مِنْهَا لَمَا يَهْبِطُ مِنْ خَشْيَةِ اللَّهِ. That if they do not believe in Allah, they don't do certain things, Allah will punish them. So to avoid the punishment, they worship and they pray. But there's no real maybe faith coming from them. There's no iman flowing really within them. Of course, they are Muslim, but this is a different kind of heart. So remember, though we believe in Allah's reward, we believe in Allah's punishment. It's part of our belief. We should have the faith because we genuinely believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we do good because it's good and the right thing to do, not because only of reward. What is required is the opposite of that kind of heart, and the opposite of that kind of heart is the heart of Rabi'a al-Adawiyya al-Basri, who said, Ilahi, ma abadtuka khawfan min narik, wa la tama'an fi jannatik, bal wajadtuka ahlan al-ibadah fa'abadtuk. Oh Allah, I do not worship you out of fear for your hell, nor do I worship you out of desire for your paradise. I found you worthy of being worshipped, therefore I worship you. Then there are those, one of the other points, كَالْحِجَارَةِ أَوْ أَشَدُّ قَسْوَةً. There are people whose hearts, besides these three, are worse than rocks, harder than rocks. And these are the hearts of Abu Lahab and Abu Jahl, uncles of the Prophet, who knew their nephew, who called him by themselves As-Sadiq al-Amin, the truthful and trustworthy. Yet neither their minds nor their hearts were open to the truth. And there is an important relationship here between heart and mind, because we need to be able to identify our deepest values and let those values guide our actions and then be influenced by rational thought. What are the lessons we learn from what we have heard so far? 3 points perhaps we can reflect upon. 3 lessons from this incident related to Musa alayhi salam and his people. 1, don't procrastinate. Don't delay. If something needs to be done, do it. If you have to do something, do what needs to be done as soon as it can be done in the best possible manner. Hadith of Rasulullah in Musnad of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, إن قامت على أحدكم القيامة وفي يده فسيلة فليغرسها. If you have in your hand a seed to plant and the trumpet blows for Qiyamah, you still have to plant the seed. Act. Because why? We must acknowledge the reality that living is temporary. The certainty that life cannot be too long. The possibility that life may be shorter than we anticipate. And all of this should motivate us to action. Do what needs to be done as well as you can do it as soon as possible. If not, we will have too many missed opportunities in life, which we may eventually regret. Number 2, some of us get so technical in matters, religious or otherwise, that we forget the essence of why we do what we need to do. We get so technical, specifically in religious matters, that we forget why we do what we need to do. Look at Musa's people. They had the choice of slaughtering any cow. Any cow. فَذْبَحُوا بَقَرَةً. Allah did not specify. They became technical. What kind of cow? How old must be? What color must it be? And eventually, they found it almost impossible to find the cow. And when they did it, the kind of cow they were asking about, and eventually, they did it half-heartedly or no-heartedly. Why? Because of stubbornness and because of their excessive questioning. That is why the Prophet ﷺ warned, hadith documented in Sahih of Bukhari and Sahih of Imam Muslim, مَا نَهِيتُكُمْ عَنْهُ فَاجْتَنِبُوا وَمَا أَمَرْتُكُمْ بِهِ فَأْتُوا مِنْهُ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. What I forbid you, stay away from it completely. What I order you to do it to the best of your ability. Then he said, فَإِنَّمَا أَهْلَكَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ كَثْرَةُ مَسَائِلِهِمْ وَاخْتِلَافُهُمْ عَلَى أَنْبِيَائِهِمْ. The people before you who experience annihilation and destruction because of the questioning and because of the argumentation with the prophets. And the Rasul said another hadith in Sahih al-Bukhari, إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَرِهَ لَكُمْ ثَلَاثًا قِيلَ وَقَالَ وَإِضَاعَةَ الْمَالِ وَكَثْرَةُ السُّؤَالِ. 3 things Allah does not like. Carrying tales, قِيلَ وَقَالَ. He said, she said, she said, he said. Carrying stories. Secondly, the misplacing of wealth, in other words, unnecessary spending. And the third one is unnecessary excessive questioning. And the third lesson we learn from the simile of the rock and of the heart. We learn the importance of having a good and a sound heart. In fact, the Quran emphasizes the most valuable asset we take from this world to the next, al-baqiyatu salihat, the permanent consequences of good action. The good actions you do is never wiped out. The permanent consequence of good actions that flow min qalbin salim, from a pure heart. So I leave you with a message The third point, always do is good, but do it with sincerity from the bottom of your heart. Otherwise, it does not really count. As the Prophet ﷺ in a hadith documented in the Sahih of Imam al-Bukhari said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَنْظُرُ إِلَى صُوَرِكُمْ وَأَمْوَالِكُمْ وَلَكِنْ يَنْظُرُ إِلَى قُلُوبِكُمْ وَأَعْمَالِكُمْ. Allah does not judge you by your physicality, nor by your position, nor by your possession, but rather by the sincerity of your hearts and the actions that flow therefrom. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله. I need. No.